Political tensions simmered for years. Taiwan was a core issue. The South China Sea remained contested. Trade disputes fueled friction. Diplomatic efforts failed to bridge gaps. Mistrust grew between Washington and Beijing. The world watched anxiously. A small spark could ignite war. The trigger was a contested naval incident. It occurred near disputed islands. Both sides blamed the other immediately. Red lines were declared crossed. Emergency hotlines buzzed with accusations. Fiery rhetoric filled the airwaves. Diplomacy faltered under the immense pressure. The situation spiraled quickly out of control. Militaries went on high alert. Forces mobilized near potential conflict zones. Satellites tracked troop movements closely. Global financial markets reacted with panic. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session. Hope for peace dwindled rapidly. The atmosphere was thick with dread. Ultimatums were exchanged between capitals. Demands were harsh and unyielding. The window for de-escalation closed shut. Leaders felt trapped by circumstances. Domestic political pressures pushed towards conflict. The world braced for the inevitable first shots. A new dangerous chapter was beginning. The stakes were incredibly high for all. Hour 0 to 1. The first salvo. War began with cyber attacks. Critical infrastructure faced immediate threats. Power grids flickered in major cities. Communication networks were severely disrupted. Financial systems experienced sudden glitches. The goal was to create chaos. Command and control systems were targeted. Hour 1 to 6. Missiles fly. Conventional missile barrages followed swiftly. Key military installations were struck. Air bases and naval ports suffered damage. Command centers were hit hard. Hypersonic missiles evaded some defenses. Both sides unleashed advanced arsenals. The initial volleys were swift and brutal. The fog of war descended quickly. Hour 6 to 12. Naval and air engagements. Fleets clashed in the Western Pacific. Aircraft carriers became vulnerable targets. Submarines engaged in deadly undersea duels. Fierce dogfights erupted in contested skies. Advanced jets like F-35S and J-20S battled. The technological prowess of both militaries was evident. Losses mounted rapidly on both sides. The human cost began to register. Hour 12 to 24. Assessing damage, next moves. Both nations assessed the initial devastation. Propaganda efforts intensified quickly. Each side claimed significant early victories. Military planners focused on reinforcing positions. They prepared for subsequent offensive operations. The world now knew a major war had erupted. International calls for a ceasefire intensified, but the fighting showed no signs of stopping. Immediate international condemnation was widespread. The UN Security Council found itself paralyzed by vetoes. Allies of the US like Japan and Australia expressed grave concern. NATO members voiced support for Washington. China's partners, though fewer, offered their backing. Some called for neutrality and calm. Most nations pleaded for an immediate cessation of hostilities. The global community was deeply divided by the conflict. Economic shockwaves rocked global markets instantly. Stock markets plummeted worldwide without delay. Oil prices surged to record highs. Critical supply chains, already fragile, were severely disrupted. Shipping routes in the Pacific became active war zones. Businesses braced for a deep global recession. The interconnected global economy suffered immensely. The impact on global trade was catastrophic. China, often called the world's factory, was at war. The US, a massive consumer market, was also a belligerent. Their conflict choked off vital trade flows. Shortages of essential goods became widespread globally. Inflation surged in many countries as a result. Developing nations reliant on stable trade were hit hardest. The intricate web of global commerce began to unravel. Humanitarian concerns rose rapidly. Civilian casualties were an inevitable part of modern warfare. Displacement of populations near conflict zones began. International aid organizations prepared for a massive crisis. The risk of a wider humanitarian disaster loomed large. The focus on military strategy often overshadowed human suffering. The world watched in horror as events unfolded. The true cost was measured in lives. The potential for military escalation was terrifying. Both sides might consider using more destructive conventional weapons. Attacks on space-based assets could escalate the conflict further. The risk of miscalculation was extremely high. Each move by one side could provoke a stronger reaction. The ladder of escalation is a dangerous one to climb. The shadow of nuclear weapons loomed. Strategic dilemmas confronted both nations. Does China attempt a full-scale invasion of Taiwan? Does the US try to enforce a complete blockade of China? These are high-risk, high-reward strategies. The potential for a long, drawn-out war of attrition was real. National resources would be drained significantly. National resolve would be severely tested. The strategic calculations were complex and fraught with peril. The devastating human and economic cost would be immense. Even a conventional war would result in countless casualties. Trillions of dollars would be wiped from the global economy. Rebuilding infrastructure and lives would take decades. The long-term damage to international relations would be profound. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to repair. The global order would be fundamentally reshaped. The scars of conflict would endure for generations. Who stands to lose the most? Ultimately, both the US and China would suffer catastrophic losses. There are no true winners in such a conflict. The global community also loses significantly. Peace, stability, and prosperity are all casualties. The war would set back human progress by decades. The primary lesson is the urgent need for diplomacy. Conflict prevention remains the highest imperative.